Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Dream Chasers Ground Zero. Today, I have with us Stephanie Walter. Stephanie, would you mind just telling us the story of your personal Ground Zero moment? And then to kind of piggyback off of that, maybe some of the things that you learned along the way to help you to get to where you are today.
Oh, sure. Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I kind of followed the path that was laid out, I think, for most people. I went to college, graduated, got a job, just a regular corporate job in the insurance world. And I did that for about 8 years and became more and more disenfranchised as things went along. But I guess the big moment for me was that I had taken on a lot of extra work and had been actually doing work above my level. And I came to get my raise, and my raise was 2%. And my direct supervisor said, "Well, that's the best raise we've given in this company, so you should be really happy." And that's kind of when it hit me that I was like, I can't continue to work in the W-2 in a corporate world. I want to work where I am working, and as hard as I work is how much money I will make. And so from there, I went in and became an insurance agent, and I've done that for the last 16 years. Getting ready at the end of this month to sell my business and go into real estate full time. I guess a little backtrack is I've always sort of invested in real estate, but in 2016, I decided to get some more, education, and really wanted to learn about doing bigger things, rather than the single family home. So I did my first syndication around 2018 and started raising money for deals. I'm on my sixth one right now and just love it. So I guess I'm learning. I'm a work in progress. I suppose older than a lot of people. So I think it's just what I've learned is it's never too late, to decide to do something different. I love real estate. I love, working in the space of working with investors. I've learned so much from the investors I've worked with. I've helped them, but they've helped me with my mindset and different things like that. But yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, congratulations. I know you mentioned that you were getting ready to sell your business and
Thank you.
along there, but I really love your story, and I love that that kind of through it all, through everything going on, you were able to kind of stay focused and motivated on getting to where you wanted to go. And I'd like to kind of just talk about that here for a second, is just to kind of ask you how you were able, if there was any sort of habits that you built up, or maybe a resource that you used, anything like that, that kind of helped you stay focused on that end goal while you were going through those things. I know you mentioned that you were in corporate at first, and then you became an insurance agent, and now you're looking to shift to go into real estate full time. So just I guess a little prelude to that question would be, was real estate something that was always on your mind, or was it something that you sort of got introduced to along the way that you decided, you know what, maybe that is a little bit interesting. Maybe I'll look into that a little bit further.
Yeah, no, I've always loved real estate. It's always made sense to me. I kind of stayed around the, single family home, small commercial, uh, you know, duplexes, stuff like that, very small. But I had seen ads and, people talking about the apartment space, and that always kind of made me a little bit interested, as well as I had a friend who she worked with a big fund company, and she was sort of explaining what she did. And I was like, gosh, that sounds really interesting. I really loved the idea of getting a group of people together to, buy something bigger than anyone could on their own. And I really like that concept. And as like I said, from 2016 on, I've just been, training and learning. And now I realize that I love it, and I'm ready to. I've built enough that has replaced my business income, so now I can do this full time. But as far as books, I think I come from the mentality of a lot of people, which is, I think of The Millionaire Next Door was a book that I liked a lot. Of course, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. But I think for me, the biggest book that changed my financial mindset and, you know, has allowed me to retire is it's called Killing Sacred Cows, and it's by Garrett Gunderson. And so that I would say is a pretty key book for me.
Yeah, that's a new one. I haven't heard about that one yet, so I'll have to look it up as soon as we finish up here today. I'll have to see what that one's all about and add it to my list. I have a
Yeah.
pretty extensive list of recommendations right now. I'm trying to get through the few that I'm in.
Yeah.
But no, awesome. Thank you for the recommendation. But yeah, so when you were kind of going through those sort of those bouts of change or those pivotal moments in your life, how were you kind of able to deal with any of the, I mean, usually with change comes fear. And there's a lot of people that refuse to change simply because they're afraid of it and they don't want to make that change. They don't want to leave where they're at. Whereas you've done that multiple times. So I want to ask, just from your experience, how you were able to deal with that, how you were able to recognize that, the change that you were making was going to pay off more in the long run than what you were still doing. And how were you able to kind of push through that and kind of build that courage to, go through that fear?
Wow, that's a good question. I think I always had kind of a blind faith that it would work for me because I'm a hard worker.
Mhm.
And like when I took over, started my insurance business, I mean, that was several, probably the first 3 to 4 years I worked from like 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. I was just working constantly, and then that helped. So I think just your perseverance, just to have the perseverance to keep working really hard. And I know that has always helped me get through just about everything. And change is really scary. I know I have a lot of fear of letting go of this business because it is sort of a regular paycheck for me, as well as I've known a lot of these clients, and they're dear friends to me, a lot of them, for the past 16 years. So it is emotional, but you just have to go down and think of what's the most important thing to you. And for me, it's to have the flexibility. Owning any kind of a business, I'm sure, as most business owners know, everyone says you can work when you want, but what that really means is you work all the time, because you're the person ultimately that's responsible for everything. So I have a 7-year-old son, and I've always been relatively flexible, but I haven't been able to like take vacations. Our family hasn't been able to take a vacation. The last time I took a week's vacation was in 2006. And so I'm just really looking forward to having that flexibility in my life.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that's one of the things that where I guess am a little bit different. I'm shooting for that a little earlier than a lot of my peers, but that freedom in mind is why a lot of the big why of what I'm doing, what I do today. But one of the things that I wanted to ask you about is just kind of, I know you've mentioned a few times now that you learned a lot from investors that you worked with and lots of other colleagues and things that you've worked with kind of along the way. I just wanted to kind of ask, what do you feel, I mean, maybe not necessarily the most important piece of advice, but a great piece of advice that you received from one of those people was that really kind of helped you shape where you wanted to go and kind of helped you on your personal growth along the way?
Oh boy, I've had lots of really great advice, because, well, a lot of the people that invest in my deals are quite, proven and successful themselves. But I think the most important thing that changed my life really was to really examine what my money is doing for me at any particular moment. And for me, I realized that I had a lot of money that was just sitting in rental properties, not giving me any kinds of returns. I think the investor that I, had worked with is he analyzes, all of his investments. He wants to be sure his money is working, for him at all times. And if you ask him what his money's doing, he'll be able to tell you, this one is giving me this cash flow, this one's giving me this. So it just made me rethink my strategy of like buying and holding, which was sort of what I thought. I just buy these rentals and hold them until retirement. Well, that was 20 years away, and I was getting maybe a few $100. The cash flow just wasn't significant. So I think just being open to repositioning your assets into things that give you better returns, especially money that's just really not doing anything except sitting. And then I think the other big thing I learned was the wealthy people, they like to invest in people, and they like to invest in business plans and kind of outcomes. So they like to have a face and a name behind what they're investing in that they believe in, and then they let the people that they've trusted run the deal, and then they check in on it, check in on the reports and be sure everything's running the way that it should be. But they like to invest directly into people and businesses, not kind of through a third party like a mutual fund or largely you don't see them investing in mutual funds at all. So that was a big eye opener for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love all of that. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second. Yeah, I wanted to ask you off of that. I know that you mentioned that you might have got a slightly later start than everybody else, but I love the fact that you're still on the path anyway. So just totally disregarding that, I love that about your story and about who you are. But that partially makes me wonder about like sort of, I'm trying to think of a good way to word it. Like in getting that slightly later start, you are sort of more caught up with the times and the way things are working right now. So I wanted to ask if you potentially had any advice for somebody who might be looking to get into real estate now as a young professional, or maybe somebody, that might have been in a similar situation to you. Or what do you think you would tell somebody looking to get into this space today?
Oh gosh, I think that I obviously believe in real estate. I love it. And so if someone has that same love, that you shouldn't get caught up in maybe just investing in, buying a rental property and then another rental property being a landlord. Maybe you don't love being a landlord, but you like the concept of real estate. To get into the syndicated space where people are buying apartments more on a team basis, and you find that, say, you have a really good skill of finding deals, or you have a really good skill of underwriting deals, or you're like me and you like to raise capital, that you can find your niche almost anywhere in this business. And if you have not the desire to go big, I would say just do something, because when I first started, I had in my mind that every year I would buy another property. And of course, I was single, and I could move from home to home, which allowed me to get the financing as an owner occupied. But I think just having a goal, and just working towards it. I talked to a lot of people at the real estate events, and they're very excited and ready to go, but then you just never hear from them or about them again. And I think that you have to put the action behind it. You have to have the goal and then do it.
Yeah, I mean, in my experience so far, I'd say one of the biggest differentiators that I've come across is just kind of following through on things that you promised to do. I mean, it's a very fast moving space, and there's a lot of fast moving entrepreneurs involved, that a lot of things can kind of get lost in translation pretty easily just because everybody's kind of going a million miles an hour. So just when you tell somebody that you're going to do something and really following through on that, it's honestly a differentiator already. And it really might not seem like something that big to someone just getting into it because they don't have the massive workload that somebody in the space may already have. So like for them to tell somebody that they're going to do something for them and follow through on that, that's not that big, but it looks really good on you. And like she just mentioned earlier, she said that these wealthy professionals like to invest in people. So when they take a chance on you or they are willing to work with you in a situation like that and you follow through on that, it looks extremely good on you. And that can lead to numerous things down the road. I know we've spoke many times about the power of networking on this show so far. But you never know when those connections can come calling back to you. So just being able to deliver on what you say you're going to is a huge differentiator for yourself.
It absolutely is. Yeah. Yeah, that's a huge thing. And you don't think it's that big, but just a response, a quick, okay, this is going to work or this isn't. It's amazing to me, just the lack of communication. I'm not sure if it's a generational thing or because I was raised to do it. And yes, that really resonates with, the right people, the investors who want to invest in your projects.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll even admit I'm with you partially there, as I don't 100% understand some of the disconnect for some people. I mean, raised in a family that just happened to communicate pretty well. So I just kind of grew up around that, and I knew like that was just kind of natural to me. I always kind of followed through on what I was doing. I kept up with people. I mean, most of the time. So obviously, you have your fair share of slips, but what I'm saying is it just came more naturally to me, where some aren't as acclimated to that type of communication. So I guess just off of that, I'd like to ask a little bit of like, do you have sort of any advice to someone who might just be coming into the space and like really has no clue how to go about, communicating with anyone kind of in this given industry? What kind of advice would you provide to them? Whether that
And
be just reaching out. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
oh no,
I was just going to say whether that be reaching out for a potential call or whatever that really looks like.
I think that's like I think that is sort of a thing that sets, successful people apart. I didn't think it's a big thing, but when I look back at my career, I noticed that, you reach out to lots of different people. And, I'm in the process right now of trying to reach out to, a speaker for a group I have. And sometimes people will say won't respond or won't get back to you, but I think that you just have to reach out and ask for a meeting. Ask for if you find someone on LinkedIn that you think would help you or would be a good contact. I found that the people that are super successful in this industry, and not only in real estate but in insurance for me before, is the ones that are really successful tend to really want to help you. They want to teach you what they know. And certainly I've reached out to people and they've, said nope, or they haven't gotten back to you at all. Just don't take it personally. But I think definitely, and that was a hard thing for me because I've always kind of been a lone wolf, running my agency. So in real estate, you really have to have a lot of different, you don't have to have a lot of different partners, but I can tell you right now that I have 3 people that mentor me in one way or the other, and they all have different, what they're good at as opposed to someone else. And so I say, don't be afraid to reach out and expand your network, because the people that are really good usually don't mind getting on a call for 10 minutes, and maybe that leads to a lasting relationship. You just never know.
Yeah, absolutely. I really love that point that you just made. And I know it's one that we've probably heard before, but I just really like to drive it home. Just that there's a lot more people out there than that, like people my age or just people don't realize are willing to help out. Um, And I really like the point that you made that really the more successful they are, the more willing to give back they are. And I think a lot of people kind of catch themselves a little bit because they think that these people are this big, daunting, huge, successful professional that they have no reason to reach out to, absolutely no business talking to. So they're so afraid to kind of put themselves out there for that person. But at the same time, that person is probably all the more likely to help you and to be interested in giving back to you. And that's one of the things that I really like about this show is that we have these people come on from all these different backgrounds, but everybody can kind of relate to this quote unquote ground zero. And if you reach out to somebody and you are just vulnerable with them and tell them, like, listen, man, I have no clue what I'm doing, but I'm really interested in learning more and I really love your take on X, it's a huge differentiator for you. And 9 times out of 10, those people will be willing to have a conversation with you about whatever that topic is. Those people are willing to help you out. And that's one of the things that I love about the real estate space is ever since I became interested in it and began getting connected and reaching out to people, I have not been turned down for a call. I haven't. Every single person that I've reached out to has been willing to have a conversation with me about whatever it is. I mean, and that was even prior to the podcast. Like, no matter what it was, just for me to ask them questions about whatever it was. I mean, some of it maybe I did approach that the right way, but at the same time, everybody is generally willing to give back. Everybody can kind of understand that quote unquote ground zero where they know where they started. And in all the conversations I heard when I was doing my networking, before was 90% of people I talked to probably said they wish they would have started sooner. So keeping that in mind, 100% of the people saying that would be willing to help somebody at that point trying to start sooner because that's where they wish they were and they're willing to divert that attention and help that person out. So that's where I was just really trying to drive that point home that you cannot be afraid to reach out to these people because more often than not, they're willing to help you.
That's definitely been my experience I can tell you honestly, anytime I've been reached out with directly, I meet and talk to everybody. So yeah, because sometimes there you never know what there is to learn from the other person too.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I'd like to just add to that is that, excuse me, a lot of people who do understand this a little bit more will realize like, oh, I want to build my network because I never know where that connection is going to lead. I never know when I could call on that again. I never know where that's going to lead. But at the same time, the people who are at the professional level right now, meeting with these younger people, are thinking the same thing. They don't know what you're going to grow up and become. They have no clue. But at the same time, they don't know when that connection could come into place because they might know that, I don't know, you're Damien from California. I don't know, but at the same time, maybe they know you're interested in this. And through that conversation with you, they can tell that, maybe you're going to be a rock star in whatever space you go into. And they'll want to keep in touch and follow you from that point. They never know when those connections are going to come through either. So it is a two-way bridge or whatever you want to call it there, that it works both ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Because as I mentioned, I think what kind of surprised me a lot with working with these really, super wealthy investors are they are very interested in the people running these deals. They're very people oriented. And I think that's different for, different generations, but this is a very relationship based business for, that may change, but right now that's the way it is. That's the way I see it anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but that's one of the things I personally like about it. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure that somebody else out there does as well. But I do believe we can go ahead and start winding it down a little bit here. I know you've provided lots of great information for us so far. I don't want to take up too much of your time today. So, first of all, just thank you for taking the time out. One of the questions that I always like to close out with is if you could go back and have a conversation with yourself. I typically say like 18 to 24-year-old, but that's necessarily just the audience that I'm going for. Whereas that could just be your ground zero self, whatever that age was. Just what do you think, if you could go back in time and have a conversation with yourself at that time, what do you think you would tell yourself?
Obviously the same thing that you've heard from a lot of people is start this process sooner, start investing in real estate, but specifically start learning about commercial real estate and putting together syndications. I think you don't see a great deal of like super young people, but I know that there's, there's just so much for people in this space, and yeah, I would have encouraged myself to just go head on into it. And at this age, I'd have probably had a private jet, but no, I would have just told myself to go big. I think that's what I would have said.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really great point. I know one of the things that I really kind of struggled with at first was like thinking extremely small. I never thought that I could have my foot in the door to some of these things that I do now that could potentially be really big for me in the future. And I think that's one of those things that is really important to kind of focus on, that like it's not a bad thing to think big. You just have to be able to find those little points to get you to that big goal. That's probably the
Yeah.
more important thing. It's while you can dream big, think small, where you think of those small little tasks, what you can do each and every day to move you towards that big goal. And that's where I think a lot of people make a difference for themselves, where they knock out those daily things that move them towards those goals, where others just dream of those big goals, but they don't know what to do and they never move any closer towards those.
Definitely. I mean, encourage people to reach out to a mentor, and just learn as much as you can, and then do the little actions, just like what you're saying. That's great advice.
Well, thank you. um, but no, anybody who's listening in right now, thinking about or looking into getting into the real estate space, like if you need a little bit of nudge, here it is, man. Like this industry is more welcoming than ever to young professionals trying to get in, and there are numerous people out there who are willing to give you advice, help you through whatever it is, learn more. They're willing to point you towards good books, towards good podcasts, or just literally have conversations with them. There's like more people than literally I can probably can't count that high, that are willing to help you out. So definitely don't be afraid to reach out and find a mentor in the space and learn from them as much as you can. And if there's I'm trying to think of a good word here. And if they're not a good fit, they're willing to even connect you to somebody else. Like it's just one of the most welcoming spaces that I've definitely ever been in. And I truly want more people to realize that as well. But yeah, with that, I mean, I just want to say thank you again, Stephanie. I really appreciate you coming on and just sharing your story, sharing your advice, and being willing to open up with us today. Just before we go ahead and close it out, do you have any more closing remarks for anybody listening in today?
No, I mean, I think just figuring out what you want to do, and then making some goals, and then just taking those little action steps would be the best thing. If you have, any specific questions about, what it is that I do, you could go to, I have a kind of they're not really podcasts, but they're more like videos of questions that people have in this industry. And you can go to askstephanienow.com, and it's STEPHANIE, or you can go to my website at www.erbewealth.com, and you can, reach out to me. I'm happy to talk to anyone that's, thinking about this space, and, possibly directing you to myself or someone else that will be happy to give you some advice.
No, that's awesome. I really love that. Thank you for providing that, and I'll definitely be sure to throw those links in the show notes as well for anybody who's listening in today. But with that, everybody, thank you again, Stephanie. I really do appreciate it. Can't thank you enough. But always remember, everyone, this is ground zero, and there's nowhere to go from here but up.